Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us back again here at Creator in Conversation. Now, today's episode is a really special episode. This podcast mainly features leading industry experts, and today's episode is, of course, no exception. You'll be introduced to filmmaker and writer Samantha Brooks. Now, Samantha has been delivering a 6-week fiction workshop with the Tallaght Academy Sequential Art TASQ Art. And what you're about to listen to is the culmination of that 6-week workshop. And what's really special is you're going to hear from some of the students from TASQ Art themselves. You're going to hear from Alistair, Mariah, and Abigail, and you're going to hear some of the short original fiction that they've produced. Now, what's really special about these short stories is that they will also see print as part of a new prose anthology called TASQ Tales, which will be coming out in May 2025. Now, how you'll be able to purchase and support that publication is by visiting the Lightning Strike store. That's lightningstrikecomics.com. If you go to the web store, you'll be able to pre-order, and it will be available as a printed book and as a digital PDF download as well. So what we do at the Academy, as well as teaching everyone the fundamentals of sequential art, it's important that first and foremost at the core of what we do are the narrative skills, storytelling. So I hope you sit back and enjoy today's episode. Just a quick show note. This is recorded shortly after a major storm hit the country, so everyone was scattered. Samantha was calling in from New York, and everyone else was in different parts of Ireland. So thanks to Matt for coming in on the audio, but you might hear some very minor disruption. And this was presented as part of a webinar on Zoom, so at times you might hear me introduce a talk before an audience. So that was just an international audience zoomed in to join us on the day. So sit back and enjoy, and remember, if you enjoy what you hear, like, follow, share, comment, and let us know what you think. Hi everyone, my name is Owen McCauley. I am the founder and president of the Tallaght Academy of Sequential Art, TASQ Art. We're one of Ireland's newest academies. We've actually only just a couple of weeks away from entering into our 1-year anniversary. What we try to do at TASQ is create an environment to support and nurture emerging talent both at home and abroad. Since our first year, we've welcomed over 80 different students from around the world, of course across the country here in Ireland, but also in the US, Australia, and even the Philippines as well. What we're about to do here today is to introduce you to a number of our students who have participated in a couple of months long workshop in developing fiction and new and original fiction stories on the tuition of Samantha Brooks. Samantha first came on my radar with her project High Functioning, and had previously worked with me delivering a panel at Dublin Comic Con. And Samantha has done an excellent job in guiding and creating such a constructive and collegial environment for all of the students here. It's been a unique experience for many of us, because I think maybe only a couple of us have actually met face to face, and the rest we've all been scattered around the globe. So it's been great with the technology that affords us. So later today, you're going to be hearing some great stories from Mariah, Abigail, and Alistair. But before we get to that stage, I want to introduce you to the tutor who made this all possible, who designed this module and delivered it, and that is Samantha Brooks. So Samantha, if you want to take over into introductions. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for being here today. I have a little introduction prepared. So thank you all for being here to celebrate the writers of this 6-week fiction workshop. And today you'll be hearing excerpts from 3 students, Alistair, Abigail, and Mariah. Also, before we begin, I would like to extend a thank you to Owen McCauley, the president of TASQ, who approached me about lecturing here. He has been a constant source of encouragement and support throughout this program. So this course covered topics including style, character, world building, rewriting, and what I think is the most important, finding ways to physically sit down and write something, anything, every day. It sounds simple enough, but as I sat down to write this introduction, I was confronted with that very challenge, the same feeling of uncertainty I remember discussing during the first class. While filled with familiar and frightening questions like, what should I write? Will it make sense? And would my middle school English teacher, who I think about way too much, approve? I was reminded of the gratitude I feel for these three writers who have bravely and consistently faced this challenge head on week after week. Structural elements of writing are the monkey bar rungs that make the journey across the fiery abyss of unknowns possible. Which is not hyperbole, that's what writing a story feels like. And while structure is important, I want to focus on how fiction mirrors life, not only through its ability to reflect our experiences back to us, but in how the process of writing it allows us to answer the dreaded question, what's next? Today, you'll have the pleasure of listening to the unique voices of three remarkable writers who embody this principle with courage, enthusiasm, and creativity. So thank you again for being here. And I'd like to introduce our first writer and story. Alistair Dennehy will be reading Invisible.
Thanks, Samantha. Invisible. Tarek took one last look in the basement changing room mirror. He would be paralyzed in place for the remaining minutes before the opening shift stirred awake upstairs, a syrup trickle of dread having stiffened him into nothing more than a tall and silent presence in the empty room. To an outside observer, his stillness could have been mistaken for some depth of calm granted to those who could conjure and enjoy peace, any time and anywhere. Tarek was enjoying nothing about these moments. The corporate bank stacked atop him, and above every building in St. George's Quay, was the place on earth he felt the smallest. While the building itself rose no more than 20 stories into Dublin's Bayside skyline, less imposing than it was sterile and out of character with its surroundings, the desk-bound cast that had waited him in the canteen were uniquely cold to Tarek. It was his birthday, but such a thing would interest no one up there. Birthdays weren't the sort of thing a corporate canteen's regulars considered on topic when announced by someone in an apron he had found. He had found most of the things he announced were considered surplus to requirement here, and so he had stopped chatting with anyone, save for those dressed exactly like him. In the Ireland of 2006, where Tarek had moved from Bosnia 3 years prior on the rumour of good cheer and warm people, no blending of beautiful foreign accents had yet coloured the voices of children, creches and play parks throughout the land. It turned out that the good cheer was incumbent on Tarek and his confederates filling a role, and that role was, until further notice, to work his hands thanklessly raw and to remain stoically invisible. He was a proven talent at that. The Irish people had an ecstasy of boom-era wealth to run into the ground in time for the Great Recession, and they would need all the outside help they could get to do it fashionably. The locker rooms, showers and delivery bay all funneled into a bare white room, scarcely ever cleaned of boot scuffs and flakes of cardboard. The catering elevator Tarek rode to the ground floor each morning was a secret capillary through the entire building. It was a rotten thing to inhabit, even for a man that, to a fair global standard, had witnessed indignities beyond description. The elevators taken by the bean counters above were pristine, warmly lit and fresh-aired. Tarek's keycard lanyard didn't work in those elevators. His keycard lanyard only worked wherever rat traps were needed or chemicals were stored. The machine he clocked into accepted his keycard only when he pressed it as hard as he could, a thin weave of hairline cracks yawning across the plastic each time. They'd blamed him for the wear and tear to each card he had needed replaced. The LCD clock on the machine read 3 minutes fast, and so Tarek, a man more punctual than most, was recorded as slightly late on his roster every day for 3 years. Nobody would ever mention it, but it put him on an arbitrary list in payroll that assumed the worst of the situation, and his paycheck was a fraction weaker for it. The last time he brought it up, he had been told not to press the card so hard. This time, the card didn't read at all. A thin rasp of air squeezed between his teeth and formed into a healthy but resigned Serbo-Croatian jebote. And so Tarek would be docked an hour's pay. The elevator card reader worked absolutely fine seconds later, and another newborn swear word entered the world. This time, The swear word was born seething. Upon reaching the ground floor, Tarek was greeted by the first accusation of the day. "You have to stop pressing the card so hard," came a thin electronic voice from one of the security desk's myriad intercoms, a fixture of every corridor in the undercrofts and spillways Tarek and his colleagues secreted through. In his youth in Sarajevo, Tarek had only ever used an intercom to speak with checkpoint guards, the teenage soldiers behind the desk at a far, far less delicate-looking bank, the regular clerks having largely been starved or beaten to death. Here, the intercoms only spoke to him unannounced. It was a felt sensation that, while he was largely invisible to those he served food to, he was an object of acute interest to the cameras watching him on a given day. Tarek, after all, was from Bosnia. Bosnia wasn't somewhere that Irish tourists went to vomit on monuments. The people who had hired him, being of the servile class of corporate catering manager that didn't know their multinational had put sawdust in American prison food, would be the last to ask him about home. They just knew the word siege bounced off the word Sarajevo and left it at that. A large frame and an unplaceable accent were exactly the sort of thing that would curtail a conversation in this place. "Hello? You need to press the key more gently, bud," came a voice again, somehow still interested in him. Tarek swallowed the lump forming in his throat. He gave a thumbs up and raised his card. The first indignity had been met and had been taken on the chin. On to the next. As Tarek approached the double doors of the prep kitchen, one of 3 in the building, he froze again, like in the locker room. The dissociation he had lapsed into was a visible veil over his vision this time, and there he stood again before a set of doors in a bank, behind which indignity slumbered. In Sarajevo, the smoke curling beneath the doors, a fishy smell of stressed, scorched electronics. For the length of a shuddering breath, here and now was there and then. On his 18th birthday, just one of 1,425 ruined birthdays in the long siege, Tarek had opened a set of doors and had seen the worst thing he would ever see. It was in a cruel, smoky murk that he had hidden among sprawled shapes and played possum. Invisible, he sighed and unclenched his fist. Forward and through the doors. Surprise! The crack of a single party popper, a trio of balloons, white, blue and yellow, an assembly of smiling faces, sincere and joyous. A cake, the colour of the balloons. Tarek began to cry. In the Ireland of 2006, as though some secret accord had been made between the words happy and birthday, Tarek had his first taste of how things would be from now on. The kitchen porter was the first to shepherd him in. "Ah, here, big man. We couldn't watch you moping on your birthday. You should have told us last year. We'd have gotten you tissues." Tarek wiped the last birthday tear he would ever shed in a bank, and was visibly happy. Today, Tarek was visible, and so he would remain.
Thank you so much. So much to say about this, but I will tell you another time, but that was great. Next up, we have Mariah Glover reading In the Midst of Grieving.
Thank you, Samantha. If it wasn't for those scholarships, I probably wouldn't have been able to afford college at all, Jovan admits to Scotty, although this is something she already knows. The balance of a middle-class family staying afloat and chasing their dreams isn't one for the weak. But I worked my butt off for those scholarships. Scotty agrees. This is true. Jovan dedicated his junior and senior year of high school, getting high test scores and applying to scholarship. Seeing the changes in his neighborhood and the people around him, he felt a calling to take this path. Jovan has always been a listener to his intuition. His boys used to clown him for not wanting to play ball after school. There was talk around the neighborhood about Jovan's desire to shift from basketball to law. At such a young age, taking on the opinions of others and being put in a position to uphold the reputation as someone who would put his hood on the map if he had pursued basketball did something to his spirit. But this was years ago, and the dream of being a lawyer hadn't stopped. I mean, how many more Black athletes do we need? Jovan takes a sip of his coffee. Listen, you know how proud I am of you, but you would have looked great in those shorts. Scotty laughs. Thanks for having my back, Scotty. Jovan stares at her, repositions his coffee cup, and stares at her again. The sound of traffic breaks the tension. A car drives by blasting Young Love by Chris Brown. Oh, we used to love this song. Scotty beams with excitement. They sing along. I ain't saying that we tryna be grown. I'm just saying that we're old enough to know we got that young love, young love. I miss you, Scotty. Scotty, dramatic but playful, shoots back. Then why did you leave me? I only went to Brooklyn, Jovan laughs. You'll be surprised how different the boroughs are. We've been neighbors for how long? Like 18 years? Scotty replies. That's a long-ass time. Jovan reflects. And now you're off the block. Scotty, proud but disappointed. You can move too. I could help you look for apartments and stuff. It's crazy that we haven't even had these conversations recently. With Jovan moving to Brooklyn, work, and class, they've barely had the chance to reflect on all the life changes that's been happening recently. Their connection isn't quite the same, but the love is still there. Despite the closeness and support he received from Scotty throughout the years, Jovan became distant when Scotty's mom got sick and passed away, although she was like a second mom to him. Dealing with his own struggles and the changes in life, he felt it would be best to distance himself, thinking then that his presence would have caused more harm than good. Jovan feels like this may have caused a strain in their friendship, but doesn't know when is the best time to bring it up. This has also caused him to question, probably for the first time in a while, how he has been navigating his life, if the pursuit to achieve his goal has affected other aspects of him. Disconnecting from Scotty during one of her toughest moments in life, he wonders what else he may have lost connection with, as he neglected characteristics of himself that once shaped his relationships with those that mattered the most.
Thank you so much, Mariah. For a little bit of context, and what's so exciting for me to hear today is that I've read all of these stories before, but these have all been rewritten. So I'm going to be reading them again in everyone's portfolios that they brought in today. So it's very exciting seeing how they've changed and definitely improved and expanded over time. The next and final story is Star-Crossed by Abigail Coburn.
That, someone yelled at her. Rizu jumped slightly from where she had been sleeping on the fighter jet. She turned slightly, trying to see where the voice came from. She glanced down and saw a woman, roughly the same age as her, standing defiantly below her. She seemed a little bit local, judging by the lack of rust on her clothes. She had bright blue eyes, like how the oceans used to look, and hair as golden as the honeyweed plants that used to grow. She wore gold-heeled boots and a skirt of the same colour. She had a sleeveless white button-up shirt, and her, unsurprisingly, clean hands were gloved in gold. Ringo noticed some sort of oxygen mask hanging from her neck. It seemed to have the same branding as the rest of her outfit, a white mouthpiece with gold embellishments on the sides. A tube ran from the inside of the mouthpiece to a tank strapped to her back, again branded with white and gold. And important people didn't stop by this planet anymore. She from her eyes and peered down at the one. "Are you?" she asked, half yawning as she stretched. The woman took a purposeful step closer to the jet. "Yes, I am," she said, "and you're not supposed to be wearing that." Herself. The only thing she could have possibly been wearing wrong was the faded white jacket. She turned back to the woman and asked, "What? My jacket?" "Yes, and it's not your jacket." "How do you know?" For a moment, eyes averted to the sunset. She stopped, turning back to Rizu, who was now much more awake. She sat with her legs dangling off the edge of the jet like a small child. "Not with the moon?" Rizu asked. The woman looked up, a little surprised by the statement. "Yeah," she replied, cautiously. Rizu felt. "I won't eat you, don't worry," she announced reassuringly, and she clambered off the jet. She stood face with the woman and smiled, extending a hand. "Rizu, bubble fruit farmer occasionally, and mostly scavenger." The woman took her hand and gave a slightly cautious smile. "In Dastra." Rizu laughed. "See, was that so hard?" The sun set over the pair, casting them in a magenta light, mostly obscured by the smog. A chill wind began to dance around them both. Astra shivered slightly, looking up to the dark sky. "Here, have this," Rizu offered, taking off the jacket. She wore a black vest underneath, her shoulder dusted with freckles from the sun. She waited at Astra, but hesitated slightly. She pulled it back against her chest and stroked the fur lining of the collar. "She didn't need it," she said quietly, running her hand over the fabric. "You didn't need the jacket." Astra went to make a smart comment, but stopped when her eyes were drawn to a small structure behind the jet. A small stone, a few flowers dotted across the freshly disturbed soil. It took Astra a few moments to figure out what it was. She felt like she'd recognised it from earlier, similar to the other stone she'd seen. She glanced over to Rizu, who had fallen silent, staring guiltily at the stone. "What for?" Astra asked quietly. To Rizu, who handed her the jacket. "I buried her. It only seemed fair," she said softly. She took several deep breaths and considered what had happened. "I'd still hadn't known more people came." At that again, sure enough, the white and gold branding became clear underneath the dirt. She turned back to Rizu, who stared at the ground. "She was similar to you," she stated, her voice barely above a whisper. "I look just as determined as you do." She pulled the jacket again. Her hair was curlier, though, and brown. She laughed sadly. "I almost didn't see her under the dirt if it wasn't for her jacket." Astra stepped a little closer, eyes continuously glancing between the stone and the woman in front of her. "I'm sorry I'm not who you're looking for," Rizu mumbled as Astra took the jacket. Her eyes glanced at her, then at the grave again. "But she wasn't using it, and I was cold, and..." Astra caught her hand and pulled her back to reality. Rizu stopped, looking up at her with a guilty expression. She pushed the jacket further into Astra's hand and attempted to take a step back. "How have a chat over tea?" Astra offered. Rizu listened cautiously as she extended a hand. "What, like you Space Corps bring tea everywhere?" she asked jokingly. "Yes, I do," Astra replied matter-of-factly. Rizu laughed, taking her hand and enjoying the warmth it offered as they shared a smile.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you everyone for sharing, and thank you everyone for listening. I know, Owen, you wanted to open us up for questions.
Yeah, so what will happen now is if anyone wants to come in with any questions they want to ask any of the attendees, you're more than welcome to do so now. You will be able to do that via the chat function or the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. Or if you have any questions, I can also bring you on to talk on mic as well. You can use the raise the hand function, but you should be enabled to ask any questions. If you would like to learn more about the Academy as well, you can find us at tasqart.com. I'm just going to leave the website into the chat for everyone as well, so you'll be able to follow us online. And look out for TASQ Tales as well. That would be the publication that will feature all of the stories that you've seen today. So this will be published in around May 2025. You'll find everything that you've heard today in print along with some additional students as well. And you can also listen back to today's reading as well through our new podcast, Creator in Conversation. So It's being recorded and will be released wherever you get podcasts. So you can find us on YouTube and Spotify as well. So if you have any questions, you're more than welcome. I want to thank everyone as well for attending today. It's always great when we have people across different time zones as well coming together. I want to say good afternoon, but it's also, I think, morning time for some people. It could even be yesterday, I think, for some people as well. But it's always been great when people take time out. I want to also commend all of the students today as well for their contributions, for the work they've done. It's everything that I dreamed of when putting together the academy, to help guide, to help nurture, to help just provide that platform for people to share their stories. And again, many, many thanks to Samantha, who made it all possible as well, who has been so hands-on, so informative, so supportive to all of the students. And we'll add in the applause sound effects for everyone in the edit.
Correct. Good. And everyone, I'm so impressed too by not only everyone's prose, but all of your acting and singing skills. That was really exciting to see. Everyone brought some great stage presence here today.
Fantastic. Well, I think that brings us to a close here today now. So all that's left to say is, I guess I'll see you all again at the reunion or the book launch, whichever comes first. And take care, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your weekend, and well done again. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us for this episode. Again, if you enjoy what you hear here, please think of sharing it with friends, family, anyone you think might be interested. Comments also help. You can leave a review or a rating as well. If there's a particular podcast platform that you prefer and you haven't been able to find us on, do let us know as well, as we spread the word of Creator in Conversation. Join us again next week for another episode, and this has been a copyright production, Colley Consultancy 2025.